I've been standing in front of groups of people now for 30 some odd years, I suppose, and I've screwed up every time. Matter of fact, the reason George hesitated when I introduced him, it wasn't his turn. And he says, I'm not up yet. Anyways, today we're honoured. We all know in Newfoundland we're on election campaigns, and the MHAs are where they're supposed to be. These two right here are in St. John's because that's where their seats are. And the rest, of course, are where their seats are talking to their people, including our Premier, I suppose. So, filling in for Premier and the people of Newfoundland and Labrador is the Honourable Sean Skinner.
Thank you very much for allowing me to attend this morning. As Doug said, the Premier is on the road. I think he's in Stephenville. Somebody told me this morning they heard he was in Stephenville. I'm not quite sure. But the Premier certainly has a lot of awareness about this issue and knows Peggy and knew her son Andrew and said the eulogy at Andrew's funeral. And he would like to be here, but unfortunately, as I said, he's on the road for other events. I would like to thank Dawn as well for all of the hard work, and George has mentioned Dawn, and she being the one person that sort of brings all this together, so I would like to acknowledge and thank her and recognise the contribution that she's made to this event here this morning as well. My involvement with organ donation goes back about 25 years. I understand, I didn't ask George, but I understand that he's an Italian from Ontario. Well, I have my mother's sister married an Italian from Ontario about 35 years ago, and 25 years ago he needed a liver donation, and he was fortunate. He was able to get a liver donation, and is still alive today and is very healthy. But 3 years ago, his liver gave up again, and he had to go back and figure out how he was going to be able to continue living, I guess. So the family did a bunch of testing, and one of my cousins was able to provide him with a second liver, and he's alive today. He's 58, 59 years of age, very healthy, living a good life, and so we're very pleased and very happy with that. So I was aware, as I said, of organ donation and the benefits of organ donation a long time ago when I was a very young man, and I've discussed it, as Steve mentioned, about talking to our families and that. I've got an organ donor card. I've discussed it with my wife. I've discussed it with my children. My wife and my children have all agreed to participate in organ donation, and we believe it's something that we can do to benefit people. To me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to take it with you, as they say. If you can leave it behind and somebody can use it, let's leave it behind and have somebody use it. Today as well, I do want to mention Andrew Hadfield. He's already been mentioned once, but this ceremony today is also dedicated to Andrew's memory. And as was indicated, as Ma'am Peggy is here, she'll speak a little bit more about Andrew a little bit later, I'm sure. The big thing, I think, is raising the awareness, educating people to it. There are 4,000 people today in Canada waiting for a transplant. Doug told me this morning that if people who passed away were signing donor cards and allowing their organs to be used, we could wipe that wait list out almost overnight. There are enough organs potentially available that people don't need to be going through what they're going through. So I think we need to follow the advice of Steve and others and George who've said this. Let's make people aware of it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it around the kitchen table. Let's become activists around it. Let's do something about it more than just talk about it. Let's sign the card. Let's educate them and make people aware. On behalf of the government of Newfoundland and Labrador and Premier Williams, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you, Minister. And we wish you well. Thank you. We wish you well. The other MHA and president this morning from here from St. John's, the St. John's West MHA, Sheila Osborne.
Good morning, everybody. I'm not here to speak as an MHA, but as a person who has had experience with organ transplant. A long time ago, I shared my wishes with my family that when I no longer needed my organs, to give them to somebody else who needed them. But I had no idea of the impact that could have on families until we went through the experience ourselves. In April 2006, my husband learned that he needed a liver transplant. He was put on the waiting list, but the waiting list was 18 months long, and he had a year to live. So do the math. has a happy ending. But there are many people who are not as lucky. They're either unable to find a live donor or they die while waiting for a match. In the waiting room, while my husband and son were in the operating room, we got to experience firsthand what a donor transplant can do. There were 5 families there in the waiting room at Toronto General Hospital that day, and their families were receiving an organ from somebody who had been unfortunately killed in an accident, but was kind enough to have signed an organ donor card. And even though he passed away, he lives on in those families. And the one that stands out most in my mind is a little girl. There was a little girl there, 5 years old. She was totally wired, but her mom was receiving a new card. Her mom was about 32 or 33. George. And while she was pregnant on her daughter, she developed a heart ailment, and she had less than a year to live. And through this kind person, the mom received a new heart that day. And I kept thinking, because of that person, I knew what I was feeling when my husband was receiving his new liver, and that he would be given a chance of life. But because of a stranger, this mom would be able to see her daughter raised, and the 5-year-old girl would experience the love of her mother. So, folks, you can give many gifts during your lives, gifts, Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, gifts for any occasion, and they're all well received and people appreciate them. But nobody knows what the gift of an organ donor can do. It's the greatest gift of all. So I encourage everybody to sign their organ donor cards. Thank you very much.
A minute ago when Dan was here, she introduced 3 people. Emery, you want to go ahead? Okay. Many years ago over in the old building there, I met Emery. Hopefully she was back then. And she was just as good looking back then as she is now.
Andrew was a member of the Kinsman Club of St. John's East, and some of the members of the Kinsman Club are here with us this morning. His mom was a member of the Connect Club of St. John's East, and Andrew later went on to become the first kin kid to join the actual Kinsman Club of St. John's East. So he made quite an impact on all of us. He was a very special man. He was born with a congenital heart disease and suffered for many years through lots of surgeries that were supposed to improve his life. He surpassed all expectations of time that he was supposed to be able to survive. Andrew lived long enough to graduate high school. He celebrated 24 birthdays. He got his driver's license. All things that most teens take for granted, but to Andrew they were monumental things. Finally he reached the point where the possibility of a heart transplant could save his life. The family moved to Ottawa to await him. However, sadly, Andrew passed away at the young age of 25 without his transplant. Andrew is not the only person who has ever died waiting for a transplant. Did they die waiting because there weren't enough organs? No. They died because there weren't enough people who signed their organ donor cards. As one of the previous speakers said, if only a minute percentage of people who die with healthy organs were to sign their organ donor card, the list would be gone. There would be no such thing as having to wait till you're on death's door to get a transplant. Everybody would get their transplant as soon as they needed it. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Andrew had a vision to make people aware of organ donor awareness. He came to Kin Canada through his friends in the Kinsman and the Connect Clubs because he knew their association would travel across Canada with this message. Unfortunately, before it was passed at our national convention, Andrew had passed away. However, his legacy continued on. On the wall up here, you see the logo that was adopted as the KIN ODAC program, KIN Organ Donor Awareness Campaign. We'd like to